Be up to 17,000 German police officers on the border ready to come in if called for. And they're estimating up to $360 million being spent on all this security, of course, which the taxpayers are going to be paying for. Journalist Heiko Schrong reported in his newsletter that the abolition of cash, in addition to the issues in the Ukraine conflict and the promotion of refugee flows to Europe, will be on this year's Bilderberg agenda. And I'm sure there will be other issues of importance that will be talked about in this year's meeting, and we'll be getting those through the leaks, through the normal channels of people hearing what's going on there and coming out and saying, hey, this is bad. We've got these world leaders planning some really terrifying things. So we're going to be getting a lot of tips that way. You can rest assured. I found an interesting tidbit on a website called Ausberger Allgemein, and they're reporting that the footpaths and different hiking trails around the Hotel Interhalpen are already being controlled. And they say, this is interesting, hikers are advised to insert a card in the pack, which I think means have your ID on you, but that's how Google Translator translated this particular article. But we're going to put the links to all these articles down there, and I encourage you to get them, translate them for yourself, or if you do speak German, maybe put what they're really saying in these in the comments below. The Der Standard contains a report from publisher Oscar Bronner, and what she talks about alternative conferences that'll be taking place, one in Innsbruck and one in Telfs. The Innsbruck one will be more like a conference where people are going to get together to talk about Bilderberg, and Telfs there will actually be a demonstration. Telfs is a really small town, as you can see on this map, and it's about a 15-minute drive down a winding road or up a winding road up to the Hotel Interhalpen. And finally, you can find much more information about the conference and the protest at Bilderberg 2015 Protest, BBP 2015 at gmx.at. They write, our protest platform has been organized deliberately in the city of Telfs and not demonstrated directly in front of the Interhalpen Hotel, an extensive information program on power and influence of elites in Innsbruck. The aim of our protest platform is to enlighten how powerful elites from industry, banking sector, intelligence agencies, and the military influence our politicians and media companies. Education and information are the most powerful weapon against aberrations of society. And finally, RT International reports Bilderberg 2015, the elite meet in mid-June in Tyrol. And they kind of poke fun. I think they're poking fun at David Icke. It contains a quote here which doesn't really translate well, but they talk about the keep the secret world government, Illuminati descendants, satanic bloodlines, reptilian humans. Such conspiracy theories are used to disguise the true nature of this conference and are often taken back by any criticism. We are against the Bilderberg Conference because they are lobbying at the highest political level that is operated, and this contradicts the demands of democracy and transparency. And that's the big problem that most people have with the Bilderberg meeting. It's that 120 to 150 of the biggest elites in Western Europe and the United States and Canada get together to meet in secret. There's no published agenda, there's no press allowed, and this definitely demands transparency and openness because we cannot have meetings like this if we are to live in a free world. And this proves that we don't live in a free world, that meetings like this can exist, and the international giant press won't even really talk about it until we force the issue with the alternative media. And that's why INFOWARS.com is going to be there from June 8th to the 14th, covering everything about the Bilderberg Conference that we can to try to get you the most up-to-date information from the sources themselves. This has been Rob Dew reporting for INFOWARS.com and INFOWARS Nightly News, and I'll be seeing you at Bilderberg.
Earlier today on the Alex Jones Show, we had Kirk Wiebe. He's an NSA whistleblower. He worked with Mr. Benny, Mr. Drake, all those guys. And he was telling us all these things that, according to Senator Marco Rubio, never happened. Mr. Rubio wants you to believe that there's nobody monitoring your phone calls or your internet conversation, can check the things on your phone. Mr. Wiebe said this is the exact opposite of reality. Yes, we know they can track your phone calls, not only track them, who you talk to on what date, we all know that, but also have your conversations recorded. Case in point, the Tsarnaev brothers, Boston bombers. Now, regardless of what you think about that, the official story, whatever, they were recording the conversations of the Tsarnaevs before they were listed as suspects, which is bulk data collection. If they can go back and listen to their phone conversations before they were listed as suspects, you think they can't go back and listen to yours as well? But this is what they want you to believe. This is the big smokescreen that they're trying to sell you. And Mr. Wiebe has such good things to talk about Mr. Benny. We're going to let him intro this piece and then go to a piece that we shot with Mr. Benny when he visited us in studio just a few months ago, telling us how this is all going down and has been going on for a very long time. Here's a look at that report.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Wiebe joins us after spending 4 years that included tours of duty in Turkey and Japan with the intelligence arm of the United States Air Force. During 63 to 67, Kirk attended Indiana University, receiving master's degrees in Russian language. In 74, the year I was born, Kirk then headed east to work for the National Security Agency, retiring in October 2001, same time that Benny and Drake and others left, and then, of course, got SWAT teamed, and they tried to set him up. Now we have the USA Freedom Act signed, and they're claiming it's a reform. From what I've seen and what you just heard David Knight break down, it's actually just a shell game. Kirk Wiebe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Alex Jones, it's a distinct honor to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you, sir. I could ask a lot of questions here, but why don't you start at the beginning and just recap what you've witnessed being inside the NSA, what's happened since, and then I'd like to get your take on the USA Freedom Act.
What's happened in a nutshell, Alex, is the very thing that President Eisenhower, on the night of January 17th, 1961, warned all of us about. And that is the, undue influence of the military-industrial complex on the ability of this government to function the way the founders intended it to, unencumbered by outside influences other than those expressly set up to deliver the voice of the people. So we have people willing to sacrifice the security of the nation for money. It's really corruption that is the real elephant in the room in the background here behind all of this. I fear we're headed down that path of last resort, where if you look to how we're going to deal with this, we're going to have to march on Washington. And I don't know if you're going to pick up a pitchfork, a baseball bat, or what to do it, but we've got to start making our voices heard. We've got to get their attention. You know, I would probably give my life for the opportunity for Bill Binney to be invited to Congress. And why wouldn't they? The guy's a genius. We know how to do this job called intelligence in big data. Catch bad guys, protect privacy at the same time without giving up anything, and they won't even talk to him. They won't even invite him in, not even a closed
And he's
session.
the guy that invented most of the systems that they're getting rich off of.
Exactly. And he didn't invent them for this purpose. We built the protections in. And my God.
I know it's all classified,
Congress,
but basically it gets into algorithms and all the rest of it where you can really zone in on the algorithm of the real bad guys. But when you add all the data, it just screws it up.
The whole point is that under a surveillance state, you have very few liberties. If they don't want you to do certain things, then they have ways and means of getting to you, like they did with us or other people. They would find things to use against you, to leverage you or influence you to do what they want you to do. You know, if you're nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Well, that's a great quote from Joseph Goebbels, first of all. And secondly, it's totally irrelevant what you think. What you think is totally irrelevant. It means absolutely nothing. The government only considers its view of you, and if you're doing something they don't like, they will come after you, no matter what you think of it.
Does the NSA routinely intercept American citizens' emails?
No.
Does the NSA intercept Americans' cell phone conversations?
No.
Google searches?
No.
Text messages?
No.
Amazon.com orders?
No.
Bank records?
No.
I thank you, and just for you, Director Clapper, again on the surveillance front, and I hope we can do this in just a yes or no answer, because I know Senator Feinstein wants to move on. Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
But to conduct that kind of collection in the United States, it would have to go through a court order, and the court would have to authorize it. We're not authorized to do it, nor do we do it.
Bill Binney, a legendary NSA mathematician, led development of a revolutionary computer system to collect, isolate, and connect important information like phone calls and financial transactions. Its code name was Thin Thread.
My name is Bill Binney. I worked for NSA in the military and as a civilian for a little over 36 years. And I designed a lot of the logic and architecture that they're using to spy on everybody in the world. And when I started doing this and using it against U.S. citizens, I became a whistleblower. I had other people who were with me as a part of that whistleblowing. I had 4 other people, including Diane Rourke from the House Intelligence Committee, and Tom Drake, Kirk Wiebe, and Ed Loomis, who were also NSA employees. So we were all part of that, and we tried to influence the government internally, and they attacked us for it, and tried to put us in jail, fabricated evidence. We caught them at it, so they failed.
The FBI raided the homes of all the people you've met in this story who filed that confidential complaint with the Defense Department.
They came busting in. I was in the shower at the time, and one of them came running up and was pointed a gun at my eyeballs and pulled me out of the shower. So
he drew a gun on you?
Yeah, he had it pointed at my head, yeah.
Talk about what a hero and how much courage you've got. I mean, you know how serious people are in this government, what they do worldwide, how corrupt it's gotten at that point. You had the will to march into Congress and to tell them what was going on. The first guy, I mean, that's 10 times bigger than Snowden internally. And to really start this whole internal debate and this avalanche of understanding now, I mean, you were really one of the first people to ring the bell to warn folks that the country as we knew it was being dismantled.
I went to the terrorist analyst shop, which we had running there for quite some time, and I said, I asked them, in all the work you're doing to analyze the terrorist problem around the world, which sites are the ones that give you information that you find valuable? And so they gave me a list of 18 sites, and so I took those 18 sites and said, okay, these are the deployment targets for our process in January of 2001. And it was, we estimated the cost to be about $9.5 million. That's all. Basically, it was working like a year and a half before 9/11 occurred, almost 2 years before 9/11. And if they'd have deployed it, we would have, in my view, there would have been no way we wouldn't have stopped 9/11. Because all the data, Tom Drake took the program after they killed it because it didn't cost enough money. So that meant that they had to create another program, which they called Trailblazer. That was the initial cut at that was $4 billion, and after that it only grew. In terms of money, they kept getting more and more. So the whole point was that they had a whole host of contractors that wanted to feed on all that money. And if you took the program we did and deployed it, it would already solve the problem. So the point is that you can't go to Congress asking for money for a problem you've already solved. So they had to kill the solution to say we have a problem so they could justify getting the money. And that's exactly what they did. They know exactly what they're doing, and the reason you can tell that they know is because they're keeping it all secret. If they weren't really trying hard to keep it secret, then you might think that they were delusional and they didn't understand what they were doing. But when they know that they're doing something wrong, they have to keep it secret. Otherwise, they feel they'll be held accountable for what they do. Why else would they keep all these things secret, do things in secret with a secret court, keeping their interpretations secret, and making secret interpretations and rules for a constitution in secret, in hiding it away from most of Congress and certainly all of the public? So if you do that, you're hiding something, and you know you're doing that. I put it down to 3 factors: power, money, and control. That is, if you have an uninformed electorate and an uninformed Congress, you can manipulate them and control them. And especially if you're pulling in a lot of data about them, you can do that and use it against them to get them, to leverage them to do what you want them to do.
Late last night, a British newspaper dropped a bombshell that the U.S. government has been collecting millions of Americans' phone records without them knowing about it.
A lot of people are learning that the scope of these surveillance programs is immense.
The government is monitoring private phone calls, your children and my children's private phone calls, and tracking who their associates are.
Right now, the U.S. government knows who he is calling, where she is calling from, and how long they are talking.
When it comes to telephone calls, nobody is listening to your telephone calls.
The NSA is trying to create a database to get ahead of what I think is the
a real growing threat. Homegrown terror.